How's it going, everyone? It is Panjno here. I've been lucky enough to put nearly 1,000 hours into one of, if not the best monitors of the year so far. A few months ago, I was lucky enough to get my hands on the brand new LG UltraGear 32GS95UE 32-inch 4K 240Hz W-OLED monitor with dual mode with support for 1080p 480Hz. Over the last few months of having this monitor, it has been my main display for everything that I've done, from content creation, Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve, single-player ultra-setting experiences on my RTX 4090, and hyper-competitive, ultra-high FPS low-latency gaming on games such as Valorant, Apex, CS2, and over the last few months I've racked up over 900 hours of use time on this display. In this video, I want to go over the settings in which I use, my overall thoughts, my impressions from all of the hours, days, weeks, and even months I've been using this display. Every time I sit at it, it still surprises me and blows me away with everything that I do. Even when I'm reading or just looking at text documents, thanks to the new MLA Plus technology that this panel utilizes alongside the adjusted subpixel layout. Unlike other OLED or QD-OLED panels, the subpixel layout on this display is fantastic for reading text, even when it's relatively small. And a big thanks to LG for providing the monitor for this video, and for full disclosure, I am able to keep it. The main determining factor whether this monitor is even an option for you is the price point. This isn't going to be for everyone, but for those of you that are on high-end systems that are able to drive 480Hz 1080p or 4K 240Hz and actually utilize those modes, this really is, in my opinion, the best of the best. For hyper-competitive games with 480Hz on an OLED display, you are getting ultra-low latency and fast pixel response times, which can beat out even the most competitive displays. With it featuring a W-OLED panel, you're getting even deeper blacks when compared to its QD-OLED rivals, with support for G-Sync and FreeSync across both 480 and 240Hz modes, native support for 4K and 1080p, LG's Pixel Sound technology to give you actually usable speakers wrapped in an incredibly unique anti-reflection coating, which is nowhere near as matte or as soft as you may be expecting, for fantastic results in the brightest and darkest environments. There are now glossy options on the market, and if you feel as if that's very important to you, then you're more than likely not looking at this monitor anyway. There are pros and cons to both, and you really need to take into consideration the setup and where exactly you're going to be utilizing the display to get the coating that suits you best. Yes, in a controlled environment, glossy will nearly always look better, but if you've got this in a room doing work on it, playing games throughout the night, the day, and at random points, a matte coating may actually give you a more usable display and a more enjoyable display. I'm not telling you which coating you should go for, just make sure that you do really weigh up those pros and cons between the two coatings. The main features that really stood out to me when it came to LG's 240Hz 4K offering is that for gamers like myself that play hyper-competitive titles such as Apex Legends, Valorant, CS2, or the occasional pub stomping in Call of Duty or Battlefield, resolution and settings in those titles come second to FPS and low latency. Just to the left of this display is one of my previous monitors, which is a 1080p 360Hz panel, which allowed me to get that experience, but with the LG, in my opinion, you're getting the best of everything. I can get a super silky smooth, beautiful image with really high settings with support for HDR on single player or slower titles, and when I want to jump into some hyper competitive gaming, I'm getting one of, if not the best experience possible when it comes to super high refresh rate and low latency. There are 1440p 360Hz OLEDs on their way, and they will also feature super low response times, but with this you're getting 480Hz at 1080p. For LG's Pixel Sound, it was something I wanted to demo when utilizing this display, and when I tried it out, it actually really surprised me. Here is a quick side-by-side comparison to one of the previous monitors I used to use compared to LG's Pixel Sound. The sheer clarity, punchiness, and volume that is able to come from this display really shocked me. Yes, a pair of dedicated speakers or a surround setup will beat this completely, but if you're looking for a somewhat TV-like experience occasionally, unlike traditional built-in monitor speakers, this display has a TV sound-like experience. Utilizing the 4K 240Hz mode, in nearly all of these examples, I do have FreeSync or G-Sync set up depending on which system I've been using this on, and it's absolutely flawless. Across the entire refresh range, from lower FPS titles to higher FPS titles, this has delivered a beautiful experience, even when compared to my previous monitor, which was a 4K 160Hz mini LED display. Even at those lower refresh rates, you're still getting massive benefits from the fact that this is utilizing OLED for its panel, and you're getting those ultra low pixel refresh times, which really come in handy in lower FPS titles to combat ghosting or smearing that you could experience on alternative panel types. Something that's doing the rounds at the moment is VRR flicker on some OLED displays. Regardless of what I've been doing, I've been utilizing VRR for about 800 hours of usage. I haven't specifically tested for VRR flicker, but I can't think of a single time where I've experienced this, but that's not to say it definitely doesn't exist or may not exist on your version. If you happen to experience VRR flicker on any display, a few quick tips to get around that is to limit the FPS in the specific game you're having the problem in to something steady and achievable about 99% of the time. A bonus for those creators that may be utilizing VRR and applications like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, or DaVinci is to go into your G-Sync settings utilizing something like NVIDIA Profile Inspector and manually disable G-Sync for those specific programs. It takes 2 seconds, and anytime you play your games, G-Sync will be there, and anytime you go into your creative applications, G-Sync will be disabled, because I've yet to utilize a monitor that hasn't flickered when I've utilized G-Sync across the entire system and I open creative apps. Moving over to 1080p 480Hz, you can switch to this at any time on the display by clicking the quick switch dual mode functionality button at the bottom of the display. First thing you may be wondering is whether or not you're able to get close to this frame rate on many of your favorite games. And have a system that's able to deliver a playable experience on a 4K 240Hz panel, you shouldn't really have much of an issue getting close to 480 FPS at 1080p on competitive games. Across a few different of my systems, I've been using this to play hundreds of hours of CS2, Valorant, Apex Legends, and XDefiant. Especially on games such as CS2 and Valorant, it's almost felt like an unfair advantage at points. I've been utilizing so many different displays over the last few years, and nothing has come close to this. I am aware that there are 540Hz offerings on the market, but these are typically limited to about 24 inches in size, and they utilize TN or IPS panels. Yes, these will be incredibly fast, and they may even have slightly lower response times than this OLED, but when it comes to pixel refresh times and handling lower FPS on these titles, with the 32GS95UE, you're getting the ability for 4K 240Hz for all of your beautiful games, and an on par or better experience in some cases, hyper competitive experience with the 480Hz mode for your competitive games. The design of the display itself is absolutely beautiful. The stand is relatively big, but it's incredibly adjustable and the whole product feels extremely premium. I myself have had the monitor mounted on a standard VESA desk mount and it's held up fantastically, and I really like the super sleek, no gamer aesthetic, near bezel-less design of this panel. It's incredibly clean and will fit in with basically all setups. Features a lightning fast grade-to-grey response time thanks to it being OLED of just 0.03 milliseconds, built upon LG's W-OLED MLA Plus technology, with support for VESA certified adaptive sync, NVIDIA G-Sync compatible, and AMD FreeSync Premium Pro. Giving you a TV-like experience with LG's Pixel Sound, features LG's Dynamic Action Sync, or DAS, one DisplayPort 1.4, two HDMI 2.1s, two USB Type-A's, and a USB Type-B, with a VESA Clear MR 13000 certification. VESA Display HDR True Black 400 up to 98.5 of the DCI-P3 color gamut, and near infinite contrast ratios thanks to this being a beautiful OLED display. If you are interested in this display, have the display already, or would like to know some of the settings I've been utilizing for this in my near 1000 hours usage, I have VRR enabled, whether that's through G-Sync or FreeSync. I have the DAS mode enabled. Game mode is set to 1. For dual mode, I don't use any scaling as it's set to off, but if it's something that interests you, you can have it scaled down to a 27 or 24 inch display. This can sound quite jarring, but you have to remember you're utilizing this on an OLED display, so it will just look like you have larger bezels around the screen. Especially if you're playing this in a dark room, it will just look like there's a floating screen. One setting I would highly recommend that you at least try out, because in my opinion it makes this display incredibly beautiful and just pop, is the black level set to low. With black level set to high, you're going to get a more realistic depiction of how colors would typically look, but when set to low, really emphasizes the fact that this is an OLED display and brings out those dark levels beautifully. If you are planning on picking up a 4K 240Hz display, especially this one, I would highly recommend that you set up G-Sync or FreeSync properly. It only takes a few minutes and it's a lot more simple than you would think, and I'll have a video linked in the description down below on how you can set that up, as it's a fantastic technology. VRR is a game changer when set up properly on a panel like this. These are my experiences with the monitor in the way that I use it, which is typically in SDR, with a good mix of both the 240 and 480Hz being used. HDR isn't particularly amazing on this display compared to its QD-OLED rivals, and I don't tend to use it on most of my displays anyway. But if HDR is an incredibly important key point to you when purchasing your next gaming monitor, then one of the QD-OLED options may be a better avenue for you to research into and potentially purchase. This will give a good enough HDR experience, but there are better HDR experiences available out there if it's something that is incredibly important to you. And furthermore, onto that point, make sure that you study as many reviews as you can for any product you buy, especially when it comes to an expensive monitor, and compare it to reviews of competing options on the market. There is no objective perfect monitor. You'll gain something in some areas and it'll be weak in others. If you want sheer peak brightness from your display, consider a mini LED option. If you want the best overall HDR experience, consider QD-OLED. If you're like me and tend to utilize SDR for most of your content, like the flexibility of 240Hz and 480Hz, this LG might be for you. If you are in the market for a top spec monitor, eye up all options and consume everything that you can to make sure that you get the monitor that fits you best and not somebody else. Only you can make that decision on what's important to you and what's not, so make sure that you decide on the features that you're actually going to use for your use case and what's important to you. With the multiple fast inputs, it's super easy to switch between utilizing a PC and a console. Here I have the PS5, where again, VRR is fully supported. The only feature that I feel is missing on this display, especially given its price point, is support for a embedded KVM. A built-in KVM would have gone a long way on this display, especially for multi-PC support. With the advancements of MLA Plus technology and this no longer being a first-gen OLED product, there has been a lot of work tackling burn-in on these displays. But if it's something that you're still concerned at, here are a few quick tips, not just for this display, but any OLED panel you may be looking at picking up. First up is to make use of any and all OLED care options the display may have built into it. When it comes to utilizing windows or playing games, you want to have as many static elements auto hide or move as possible. For the Windows desktop, I navigate down to the taskbar, go to taskbar settings, and I have the taskbar set to auto hide. This means that the taskbar only comes up if I press the Windows button or drag the mouse down to it. I tend to hide my desktop icons. Not only does this give me a cleaner looking desktop, but it also helps to prevent burn-in. When it comes to HUD elements inside of games or crosshairs, I'd recommend changing them up every so often. This doesn't have to be something you do every minute. If you notice that you're sinking hundreds of hours into a game with static elements, try adjusting them around if you can. Avoid utilizing static overlays. If you need to use overlays such as MSI Afterburner or FPS counters, try and move them around every few months just to not keep them in the same place. There's been a lot of work to mitigate burn-in on these more modern OLED displays, and it should never be something that you really need to worry about, but I just wanted to share those quick tips with you if you are somewhat concerned. If you happen to be worried about getting the most out of this monitor when it comes to FPS, even if you happen to not have the absolute fastest gaming PC possible, we now thankfully have technologies such as AMD's FSR, Nvidia's DLSS, and frame generation technology. This is more so for single player titles, but they're a fantastic and easy way to get more FPS out of almost any of your games. And with this set to a 4K native resolution, utilizing DLSS even at balanced or performance mode, you're going to get less of a visual impact than you would if you were utilizing a lower resolution display. One step further than this, if your favorite games don't support DLSS, AMD FSR, Intel XeSS, or frame generation, one tool I would highly recommend that you pick up if you're looking at making the jump to a 4K high refresh rate panel is lossless scaling. That is available on Steam. It's super cheap and incredibly good value for what it offers. It allows you to implement upscaling and frame generation if you want it in nearly every single PC game you play. There will be a dedicated video coming to the channel on this, so make sure that you are subscribed if you want to learn more, alongside checking out lossless scaling on Steam. If you're a PC gamer, I would highly recommend this program. You will not regret it. And it's important to remember that I feel this is the best monitor for me and my uses. If your uses and wish list lines up with mine, you won't be disappointed here. But if you want something that's just for single player titles, more casual gaming, you don't do much productivity, a QD-OLED option may better suit you, but for me and how I use it, it is the best option out there for me and those like me. And if you'd like to learn more about the display or potentially purchase one, or at least try, as they are sold out everywhere, make sure to check out the link in the description down below. Make sure to look out for deals and potentially even stackable coupons, as some users have reported they've been able to get this for close to or just under $1,000, which seriously improves its value, especially given the additional options you have with LG's offering here, especially with dual mode over competing QD-OLED options. A massive thanks to LG Ultra Gear for providing this monitor for the video. If you'd like to check out more content, check out one of the 2 videos on screen now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.